Okay, so we've worked on validation today. We've practiced building another form and save page, and we're going to have another chance to do it in our assignment. But it's important that we talk about Git and GitHub and version control systems. So when we talk about version control, when you hear this term, what does it mean? Be a good job interview question for a student developer. What is version control? What does that term mean?
Oh, you get to choose what version of software you get to choose the version. Like you check to see if there's any if the latest version is problematic, we can revert back to a previous version.
Okay, that's right. That's a good point, Chris. Yeah, if we have a latest version. So version control, it's like an archiving system. So when we save our changes, instead of just overwriting the previous version, we keep a history of all the different changes. So Chris, you kind of described some of the utility of this. Why else would we want version control? What else does it help us do? What you've said, Chris, is absolutely true. It lets us go back to an earlier version. How else is this helpful for us?
It lets people look through the versions, and if we need something, we can use the previous version apart from the previous version.
Absolutely. Good point. And yes, David, that's right, Chris. And David, you said it shows the changes after they've happened. So here's a project. We'll have a look at this. Let's look at the version history. So this was a project done for a business in the community, but it was built by students as a research project. So there are 282 versions of this project. It's several years old. And we can see, if we want to see the changes, this shows me what got changed in the latest version. So whatever's red, that got removed, and this got added instead. So we can actually see all of the changes, what files were changed, and specifically what code was modified in here. So there are different version control systems, but Git and GitHub are the most popular. So Git is a program we install on our computers, and I want everybody to go ahead and install it. I will give you the link. It's actually on Blackboard, but I'll put it in the chat. It's free. It runs on Windows, it runs on Mac OS, it runs on Linux. In fact, Git was originally a Linux program. Oh, you'd think I would have put the link. Sorry. Here's the link. So I want you to go ahead and install Git. It won't take very long. Pardon me. So the Git site will recognize your operating system. I don't think there's any Linux users in the class. Occasionally there's one. So install it for Windows or install it for Mac OS. So what does this do? How does it work? So as Chris said, it lets us create multiple versions, and each version, Colton, coming back to kind of your question about the assignment, each version's automatically time-stamped. So in Git, the language for a version is called a commit. Git doesn't call them commits. Doesn't call them versions, calls them commits. So every commit is time-stamped as to when this version is from. So we can compare, we can restore, and we can even merge. So particularly when we're working in a team environment, Git lets each member of the team have their own version, and then we can merge the code together. So Git was originally developed back in 2005 for Linux. And every Git project is what's known as a repository. So it has a full history and version tracking. So when we work with Git, we also work with GitHub. So Git is the versioning software, the archiving software that we install on our computers. GitHub is a free cloud-based hosted service that lets us publish and keep track of all of our versions online. There are some other version control services online. There's one called GitLab. There's another one called Bitbucket. They all work similarly to GitHub, but GitHub, which was bought by Microsoft a couple of years ago, is kind of the industry standard. It's the most common one. So GitHub works with Git. So a project would look something like this on GitHub. It's got a history of all the versions. So one of the other great things about GitHub, not only does it keep track of our versions, but it also serves as a free online backup for all of our code. So if something happens to our computer, if our computer crashes, it gets stolen, our house gets robbed, or burns down, if we're regularly uploading new commits to GitHub, all our code is safely backed up in the cloud. So you should never lose your work if we're backing up to GitHub regularly. So here are some of the reasons that we use GitHub. We use it for version control, so it allows us to experiment and work on things without wrecking our final project. It means if we're working on multiple computers, we can store everything in one place, and it also allows us to collaborate with others. We won't do that with GitHub in this class, but we will next year in some of our other classes. So I'll show you what this looks like. So I'll show you another student project. It's from a couple years ago in the Project Studio course, which I teach, which will be together every January. So this was a group project. There were 5 members of the team, and this project has 26 what are called branches. So if we look at this, different members of the team had their own branches so they could work on certain features of the project without interfering with the others. So you basically can make a copy and work on that in isolation. And when you're done your work, you can merge your code in with the rest of the project. And if you break something, you haven't broken the main working version. We won't really worry about this. So you should have installed Git. And now what I want you to do is go to github.com, and we're going to create an account for free there. So you can just go in your browser to https://github.com. Some of you may have accounts already. I know, Chris, you've got one, which is great. So pop over to github.com. And you can sign up for a free account. You create a username, put in an email address, probably best to use your student email, and create a password. And once you do, GitHub will send you a verification link to your email, which you just need to click on to activate the account. And you'll want to store your password securely somewhere because you're going to need this password. So go ahead and sign up for your account. And then go and check your email and verify. And maybe give me a quick indication in the chat when you've created your account and verified it. because we won't move ahead until you've had a chance to do that. So we're going to install Git on our computers. We're going to create a free GitHub account and verify them. So please give me an indication when you've completed that. Okay, great. Thanks, Colton. Okay, done. Great. Thanks, Preston. Absolutely true. One of the other common reasons we use GitHub is because it's so standard in industry. Employers have told us that they look at students' GitHub pages when they're looking at job candidates. They want to see your projects and see your code. So not only do they want to see the end product, like I showed you, but they want to be able to look at your code on GitHub. So it also helps you in the job market. It's kind of like you're part of your professional presence as a designer or as a developer. So what we want to do now is we want to take our code that we've made. Okay. We want to take the code we've made and we want to publish it to GitHub. And then we want to make some changes to it and see how the archiving, the versioning works in GitHub. So once you've created your account, we're going to go and create a new project, what GitHub calls a repository. So on your main GitHub page, you can just click the plus sign here and choose New Repository. And that'll give you a screen like this. And there's certain options we want to choose. We're going to create a new repository for our PHP gaming site. So I'm just going to call it PHP gaming. You can create any repository names, it just can't have spaces in it. We can put in a description. So this will be our COMP1006 PHP in-class lessons, winter 2021. And make your repository private. So no one else will be able to see it except you. That way it will be safe, for example, to include your database credentials because it will be private. So make sure you choose private. All of these we're going to leave out. We'll come back to this stuff later. Make sure these three are all unchecked. So again, I made a new repository, gave it a name, and I set it to private. And then I'm just going to click on create. So this is going to create a new project or new repository on GitHub at this URL. And it's private, so no one else can see it except for you. So we're going to leave this part for a minute on GitHub. So now we've got in the cloud, we have this project, but it's empty. There's no files here yet. So now I'm going to go back to PHP Storm. I've made a copy of it because my project's already on GitHub, so I've made a copy that isn't on GitHub. So I'll just open up my copied project. You can just do this right within your PHP gaming project. So I just made a duplicate. So if you are using WebStorm, down here we've got this little window that says terminal. I'm going to open that up, and this will open like a Windows command prompt or a Mac terminal right in my project folder. So we've got a series of commands we need to go through. If you're on VS Code, okay, Colton, good question. Let me open it up. If there isn't a window, I'll open it that way. Thank you, David. So yeah, if you just go to terminal and new terminal. So same thing. Now you get a Windows PowerShell or again, a Mac. So what we want to do first is we have to, thank you, David and Hannah, for that. We have to initialize Git. So right now, Git is not watching our project for changes. So we want to get it to watch for changes. So when we first create a project, I'm going to run the command, and I'll put these in the chat, and they're on Blackboard. I'll show you where to find them. I'm going to run the command git space init. And I'm going to hit enter. So when that happens, I get a message. It says it initialized an empty Git repository in C, my Git test folder, and then it created this folder called .git. If I go and look in Windows, it now just added at 129. It added this little hidden folder here. You can see it's grayed out. Some of you may not even see it. So this means Git is now going to watch for any changes I make, either by adding files, deleting files, or changing existing files. Git is watching. So I only need to do initialize once. I can now work in this project, make as many changes I want. Git is going to keep track of all my changes. So I do git init once, and I've listed this on Blackboard. Here's the commands for future reference. Under tools and resources, here are all your Git commands. We basically use 5 of them. Git init, we only do this once. So Git is now watching this folder for any changes. The second step is we need this command. We need to run the command git space add space dot. This means watch all the files for changes. Whoops, so it's git, add, and then a dot. And I hit enter. And it goes and adds all of the files that are in the project. So it's now, we've initialized Git. It's tracking all the files in the project. And now what we want to do is we want to create our first version or our first snapshot. In Git language, it's called a commit. So our command is git commit, and then I put in -m. -m is for a message. Git commit -m, I'll say adding initial files. So the message should describe what's in this version. What changes did we make to the project? So I'll put this in the chat as well. And I'll hit enter. So it's now basically taken a snapshot of this is what the project looks like at this time. So we have a local version now. But what we want to do now is we want to connect our local version and the version we have on GitHub, we want to connect them together. So I'm going to go to my GitHub page and I need to copy the URL. Okay, right. I'm already logged in and I will show you how to fix that. Your operating system will store your Git credentials permanently, so it won't ask you to repeat it. So you only need to do this once. You're going to do git config -- global user.name. I'm just typing it in the chat. So you'll need to run this command only once. Git config -- global, so store it permanently. Yep, that's fine. And then the next command after, you do user.email. I'm putting it in the chat with your email address that you used for GitHub. So you do the user.name with your GitHub username, and then you do email. You have to run them both. So this will store in your Windows credential or your Mac credential store. It'll store your GitHub username and email permanently. So you shouldn't get asked for this again, only once. I'm not going to run that command because my credentials are already added. Let me know if that fixes it. So we've initialized Git, we've added all the project files, and we've created a local archive, a local snapshot. Okay. So go back to your GitHub repository and copy the URL. You can either copy it just from your browser address bar. It also shows up right here under this quick setup. And there's a copy button right here. Doesn't matter if it has the .git extension or not. So I'll just copy that. And then we want to link this GitHub repository with our local project. So again, we only have to do this once with a new project. So we'll do git remote add the origin, and then I'm going to paste in my URL. So this will be, I'm putting it in the chat, git remote add origin, https github.com, your username / your repo name. So in the link I've put in the chat, you need to replace the your username and the your repo name. So this is going to connect this folder on my computer to the GitHub repository in the cloud. So they'll then be linked. So then I'm going to hit enter. You will probably get prompted for your password here. This is only going to happen once because you're just setting up Git for the first time. When you type your password, it won't show you the characters. That's okay. Just type in your GitHub password that you just created. No, if it didn't prompt you for the password, that's okay. So now our local project is linked to this URL. If I go back to GitHub and refresh, notice there's nothing here yet though. It's still empty. So the last thing we need to do is we need to run a push command. Push is basically an upload. Copy the project from our machine, our computer, to GitHub. Okay, that's okay, Hannah. You may not see any confirmation. If you're not getting an error, that's good. So the last step to upload is to do a git push from the origin, from our local repository. By default, it's going to go to a branch. There's a branch on our repository called master. So here's the last command. We will get some output here. So I'm going to run git push origin master and hit enter. And it's going to think, it's going to compress my project files. And then it says new branch master, 32 of 32 files. Okay. And if I refresh my repository now, you can see it copied everything from my local project. Hannah, is there any more description other than fail to push? There should be more there. What else does it say? So have a look through the terminal. There may be some more info. Okay, let's see what's going on. Okay. I can't see your repository because it's private. Hannah, if you okay, so you're getting the same, Ariel. Okay, try this. Instead of master, let's try pushing to main. Let's do git push origin main. See if that works. It might not, but we'll try it. Try that and see if you get the same error. Okay. Okay, Hannah and Ariel, can you invite me to your repository? I'll show you how to do that because you'll all need to do this for your assignment. Click on settings and then manage access. So settings is here, then you go to manage access. It'll want you to put in your password again. And then if you come down here to invite a collaborator, put in my username, which is IFOTN. So pick me and send me an invite. So again, you need to go to Settings, Manage Access, Invite me as a collaborator. Then I can see your repository. You don't have under Settings, you don't have Manage Access. What options do you have here? Maybe you could turn your microphone on. That might help a bit.
Okay, so I only have overview, repositories, projects, and packages.
You have to be in your repository. I think you're on the home page.
Oh, okay, there we are.
Yeah. My username is IFOTN. So through the repository settings. Okay, so I'll accept and let's see what's going on. Okay. Okay, let's see, why are we getting this error? It shouldn't be. Your repository is empty. So that's good. It should be empty. Is everybody getting the same error as Hannah and Ariel, or is anybody able to push correctly? Just so I'm aware what's happening with other people. Okay, so Colton, David, yours worked. Okay, it made you authenticate in the browser. I think it'll only do that once. Hannah and Ariel, did you possibly get an authentication pop-up in your browser? Did it take you to GitHub and ask you to log in anywhere? No. Okay. I'm maybe going to ask you to share in just a minute. Okay. So Hannah and Ariel, I will come back to both of you and help you debug. So our code is on GitHub now. I want to make a change to it so we can see what happens when we make a new change. So I'm going to add one new file. So I'm going to right click my project. I'm going to make a new file. And the file is going to be called readme in all caps and then in lowercase md. I'll put the name in the chat. MD stands for Markdown. So this supports HTML and plain text. So I'll create the README file. I'll put on maybe a heading. And I'll just put in an H1 and a P tag. So we've changed our project now. We now have a new file on our local computer that we don't have on GitHub. So we need to run 3 of the commands we've already run to make a new version. We don't need to run git init because we only have to do that once. So I'm going to run git add dot. So watch for the new file. I then want to make a new commit, added readme. So I'm putting in a description of what we changed in the project. So this is going to create a new version, and it says we had one insertion. It created the README file. And then I can git push origin master. That's going to upload this change to GitHub. So the first time we set up a new repository, we run 5 commands: init, add, commit, add the remote, and push. Every other time we want to upload changes, we only need to do add, commit, push. So if I go back to my repository, it now shows 2 commits, and it shows my README file down here. This is like a documentation file for my project. So if I go into my commit history, it says the first one was made at 131 with the description adding files. My last commit was at 147 where I added the README file. So whenever I make changes going forward, I can make a new commit and push those files to GitHub. So I can see all my changes. And now all my work is backed up online in the cloud. So if something happens to my computer, I don't lose the project. I know this is new. I know working in the command line is probably something you're not very familiar with. We will do it every week. And the commands are here for you on Blackboard to refer to. And these slides are here. Ariel and Hannah, I'll come back to you in just a second. I've also done a little tutorial site here on Google Sites that walks you through Git from the beginning. I had to do this as a project. So I did a little intro video. So this is here, you can go through it, but it's basically all the things we just did. Installing, creating an account, creating a repository, committing, explaining the README file and changes. So there's a little tutorial here with screenshots and little kind of quizzes as you go along. So I made this last year. The link is here. You can refer to it anytime. So I want you to play around with Git, try to get your code to upload. And if you need help, I'm happy to stick around in class a bit now. Ariel and Hannah, if you have a few minutes, I will look at each of yours. You can also come to office hours by making an appointment if you're having any problems or you have questions with Git. Pretty soon you'll all be experts. It's okay that it seems weird and kind of intimidating at the beginning. It is. We're going to use it a lot and it'll get better. Okay, so you have 2 weeks to work on your assignment. I'm going to stop our recording. I'm happy to stick around for a bit and help anybody who needs help. If yours is working, then have a great rest of your week and a good long weekend, and I'll see you next Wednesday.